Inside the echoing walls of a maximum security prison, hierarchy rules everything. The strong prey on the weak, and newcomers are easy targets. On his first day, a quiet black man stepped into the cafeteria, calm, composed, carrying a tray of food. No one knew his name. No one knew his past. But one man noticed his silence and mistook it for fear. The prison bully, a tattoo-covered giant who ruled through intimidation, decided to make an example out of the newcomer. What he didn't realize was that the man he was about to humiliate had once faced monsters far deadlier and had never lost a fight. The new inmate, Malik Hayes, arrived at Iron Ridge Correctional Facility under the weight of whispers. The guards described him as polite, reserved, and disciplined, traits that didn't fit the chaos of prison life. He kept to himself, spending most of his time reading or exercising in silence. To the other inmates, he was an enigma. To the bullies, he was an opportunity. Among them was Kurt Doyle, a man built like a tank with a reputation for breaking spirits before breakfast. Kurt had ruled the cell block for years through fear alone. He picked his targets carefully, anyone who wouldn't fight back. Malik seemed perfect. On Malik's second day, Kurt began the ritual. Taunts in the hallway, shoves in the cafeteria line, comments meant to provoke. Malik didn't respond. His stillness unnerved a few, but most mistook it for submission. Behind that quiet exterior, Malik was fighting something deeper than fear. Years before prison, he had been a professional mixed martial artist, a global champion whose name had once filled arenas. But tragedy had struck. A split-second accident in the ring had cost a man his life, and guilt drove Malik to isolation. When his life spiraled into depression and bad choices, prison became his reckoning. Now, inside Iron Ridge, he was determined to leave violence behind. But fate and a bully's ego had other plans. Kurt's harassment escalated quickly. He upended Malik's tray at lunch, tripped him in the hallway, spread rumors that the rookie was weak. Each day, the tension thickened like smoke. Some inmates started to whisper, not about Malik's silence, but his composure. He never reacted, never pleaded. That quiet unnerved the predators who thrived on fear. One afternoon, Kurt decided to humiliate him publicly. The cafeteria buzzed with chatter and clattering trays as Kurt approached from behind, a metal cup in his hand. Without warning, he poured water over Malik's head. The room fell silent. Forks froze mid-air. Malik sat motionless for a long moment. Then, slowly, he placed his utensils down, wiped his face, and looked up. Not in anger, but with calm, piercing focus. It was the kind of look that spoke volumes. The kind that said, "You've made a mistake." Kurt laughed it off, shoving Malik's shoulder, expecting retaliation that would earn him a fight to dominate. But Malik stood, collected his tray, and walked away without a word. To everyone else, that seemed like surrender. But to Malik, it was control. He knew violence solved nothing. Still, in places like Iron Ridge, peace was often misunderstood as weakness, and weakness was blood in the water. Days later, Kurt cornered Malik in the yard, surrounded by his crew. They mocked him, blocked his way, threw insults that cut deeper than fists ever could. Malik still didn't respond. The crowd grew, drawn by the scent of conflict. Then, with one shove too many, the switch flipped. Malik didn't attack, he reacted. Years of training came alive in fluid motion. He didn't punch or rage. He redirected. Within seconds, Kurt was on the ground, gasping for air, his dominance shattered by precision and restraint. Malik stepped back, eyes steady, breath calm. The yard went silent. For the first time in years, the prison bully knew fear, not from being hit, but from realizing he'd misjudged his prey. Word of the encounter spread through the prison like wildfire. Rumors twisted the story. Some said Malik had taken Kurt down with a single move. Others claimed he'd fought like a ghost, untouchable and unbothered. The truth didn't matter. Perception did. Kurt's empire of intimidation crumbled overnight. He avoided Malik, but pride is a dangerous thing. One night in the gym, unable to let go of humiliation, Kurt confronted him again. There were no spectators this time, just two men and the hum of flickering lights. Malik turned to face him. He didn't posture, didn't threaten. "I don't want to fight," he said quietly. But Kurt lunged anyway, and instinct took over. Malik's defense was effortless, controlled, graceful, almost surgical. Within moments, Kurt was immobilized. No serious harm done, just the realization that brute strength could never match mastery. When the guards arrived, they found Kurt silent for the first time in years. Malik helped him to his feet before they led him away. That small gesture, helping the man who tried to break him, spoke louder than any victory ever could. Malik's legend grew not because of what he did, but how he did it. The inmates whispered his name with respect, not fear. Even the guards watched him differently, not as another number, but as proof that true strength could exist without cruelty. Weeks later, the prison found an uneasy peace. The same corridors that once echoed with taunts and tension now carried a strange quiet. Kurt kept to himself, changed in subtle but unmistakable ways, quieter, more thoughtful, no longer the shadow that loomed over every meal. His arrogance had been replaced by something else, a heavy awareness of what true power looked like. The other inmates noticed it too. They no longer moved out of Kurt's way from fear. They simply nodded in acknowledgement, not of him, but of the quiet order that now reigned. Malik continued his routines, but something within him had shifted as well. Each morning, he woke before dawn, performing the same disciplined stretches he'd done for years. Yet now his movements carried purpose beyond himself. Younger inmates often watched him from a distance, drawn to the calm that seemed to radiate from his presence. Eventually, one or two would approach, asking questions about control, patience, or even forgiveness. Malik never gave long speeches. He simply showed them, through his discipline, through his silence, through his refusal to let anger define him. The cafeteria, once a stage for violence and humiliation, became strangely different. Conversations softened, laughter returned, and for the first time in a long while, no one flinched when a tray dropped. Even the guards, hardened by years of routine brutality, noticed the shift. They didn't understand it fully, but they respected it. In a world built on dominance, Malik's greatest act wasn't defeating a bully. It was proving that restraint could be mightier than rage. He became a quiet symbol of dignity under pressure, of strength without hatred, of grace within chaos. Word spread beyond Iron Ridge. A counselor mentioned him to others, saying, "There's a man in here who leads without speaking." When Malik was finally released, a guard stopped him at the gate. "You changed this place," the man said, almost hesitant. Malik didn't reply, but the small nod he gave carried years of meaning, humility, forgiveness, and peace. Outside, the sun hit his face for the first time in years. He closed his eyes, inhaling freedom not as a right, but as a lesson earned. The air felt lighter, not because the bars were gone, but because the weight of hate had finally lifted. Because sometimes, the most powerful fights aren't won in cages or arenas. They're fought in silence. Against anger, against hate itself, and somewhere inside Iron Ridge, stories of the rookie who wasn't so rookie kept spreading, passed from cell to cell, reshaped by each voice, growing into legend. For some, it was just a tale of a man who stood his ground. But for those who'd lived it, it was proof that even in the darkest places, respect can grow where violence once reigned. Strength is not defined by how hard you hit, but by how deeply you refuse to become what tried to break you.